David wasn't the first person to allegedly abuse Celeste. This victim in the case, rest in peace to Celeste, apparently had been victimized before. Now, there's a lot of debates going on right now about who knew, who was responsible, all these kinds of things. But what if I told you that some very strange things went on behind the scenes, and the first person to Celeste ended up getting killed in very suspicious circumstances, and it had been swept under the rug for years. It was initially charged as a murder, but later on, everything changed. I've got a bunch of new information in this video that I'm going to show you guys, and you're going to be very, very surprised to find out what went down and some of the very interesting facts behind the death, I'm not going to say murder, but the death of the person who allegedly was abusing Celeste before David. Now, before I get into it, I just want to give you guys a trigger warning. This video is going to contain themes of, abuse against adult situations that are not appropriate. I'm giving you guys a warning for this. I'm only telling you about this stuff for educational, documentary, journalistic, and scientific purposes. This is a story in the public interest. I want to raise awareness about these issues. I want to create create and document a piece that basically raises awareness, spreads awareness in the public interest, and warns the public about these horrific methods that groomers are using to target in the modern era. If you don't want to hear any of that, I would suggest that you turn this video off, pick another video. If you do want to hear that, I've given you a fair warning, and I'm not going to show you anything in this video that goes against YouTube's community guidelines or anything like that. And the context of all of this is to raise public awareness and to document this horrific history. So I'm just letting you guys know that, okay? So I have covered this before. And so this was a video that I did 6 months ago. Now, it's ironic because a lot of people have kind of lied recently and said, oh, Ross has never spoken about Gus, the guy that, had abused Celeste before David. Well, that's not true. I spoke about this months ago before it was on anybody's radar. But what's very interesting is this guy, Gus, has now resurfaced, okay? Recently, there's kind of more information. So people have been posting this on Reddit. This is the Celeste subreddit. It says, let's not forget that Celeste was by Gustavo at age. This was before David through Fortnite around late 2021 to early 2022. Around 2020, Gus was Celeste's first abuser. Later that year, he was gunned down over a drug deal gone wrong. This information sticks out to me the most in Celeste's case because it clearly indicates how horribly this system failed this little girl and continues to fail many others like her. Now, there's some interesting information in this thread that I'm going to read you. And then I'm going to update you with a bunch of facts that I have not seen anywhere else at all about this incident. And I've been trying for months to find out what actually happened in this case, and we've actually gotten to the bottom of it now. People saying this is another reason it frustrates me when people talk about Celeste's behavior. She was from a young age, which made her even more vulnerable in future. Thanks for reminding the community about this. Thank God Gus can no longer harm other. It says you need to remember to add this is unconfirmed and alleged. People saying, forgive me, seriously, I don't want to be devil's advocate or anything, but it came from her messages directly. Wouldn't it be from the victim's mouth specifically, a first-hand source? Yeah, it's not criminally processed through the courts, but it comes from her directly. It says, but that's the thing, it's not all directly from her messages, it's bits and pieces, other messages that's not confirmed from her. It's not because I want to dismiss the possibility, it's very likely to have happened, but I take actual facts versus allegation and possibility seriously. All right, we get the gist, okay? People are saying there's multiple Gus's in Celeste's family. Here's the thing, all right? This is the thing people take at the hardest evidence, is that her brother confirmed that Celeste knew a Gus and that he died. Now, I'm going to show you evidence in this video that Celeste was happy that Gus got killed. I've got proof of that in this video. I'm going to show you proof that Celeste was happy that Gus got killed. Absolute facts, all right? And there's not really any way around it. Okay, it says his lack of reaction to that stands out to me. If the brother knew Celeste had been with an named Gus, age 22, when she was, it's crazy he would just casually say, yeah, that's true, but he's dead now. Now, we're going to see more information here, okay, later on in this video. People are blaming the family. I'm not even going to get into that, saying Gus was a family friend. Bear in mind, there's multiple Gus's, all right? But as far as we know, this was confirmed by the brother that this guy died. And this was all confirmed. It all kind of came up in these messages. Okay, it says nothing's been confirmed. It's putting things together. Deleted user's comment together with message Celeste wrote to a friend. The link is here. Although I agree it's most definitely possible, I have a hard time with people assuming things are factual when it's just speculation and reaching. So this was the message. And she was basically having a conversation with somebody and basically said, yeah, she did stuff with certain people. She said there was only blood with David, and they said with Gus I was just drunk and did it because he got mad at me the first time for not having it with him. Okay, so that was going around, Allegedly, this was Celeste in Discord saying that she was a V until, all right? And so that would have happened from Gus, allegedly, while she was, all right? And she claimed, I got essayed, so silly, crying face, it's okay. So people saying, you know, it is questionable whether or not that's Celeste, but a lot of people believe that it's her. They believe that it could be her. But as far as we know, okay, that is the information that was going around, all right? The brother confirmed that, also said Gus is deceased, okay? So here's the information I'm going to give you, all right? On February the 21st, 2020, 20-year-old Gustavo Morales and 21-year-old Joshua Carrion were arrested over a carjacking. This is Lake Elsinore carjackers arrested, all right? And this is in Celeste area. The Riverside County Sheriff's reported that both men were being held at Coysburg Detention Center on suspicion of kidnapping, robbery, carjacking, and assault with a deadly weapon. Okay, go away. So on the left, that's Gustavo Morales, and that's Joshua Carrion on the right. Lake Elsinore, California. Lake Elsinore carjacking led to the arrest of two men who are residents of the city. Gustavo Morales, 20, and Joshua Carrion are suspected of carjacking at 6:50 p.m. Friday on the 31,000 block of Riverside Drive, according to the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. The victim did not know the suspects, the Sheriff's Department said, and the investigation led deputies to the stolen vehicle, which was found abandoned on Conard Avenue. Morales and Carrion were eventually tracked down and arrested Saturday. Investigators didn't say how they tied Morales and Carrion to the crime. According to jail records, both men were being held at the Coysburg Detention Center on suspicion of kidnapping, robbery, carjacking, and assault with a deadly weapon. So they were into some street stuff, all right? So 7 months after that incident, Gustavo, Gus, ends up being shot and killed by a 19-year-old called Noah. And this is his picture, okay? Lake Elsinore homicide investigation, arrest announced. Noah Arath Buenrostro was being held in lieu of $1 million bail at the Southwest Detention Center in Murrieta. That's him, allegedly. Lake Elsinore, California, the Riverside County Sheriff's Department announced the arrest of a 19-year-old man in connection with the Lake Elsinore killing this week. Noah Arath Buenrostro of Lake Elsinore was arrested at 8 a.m. Thursday by gang task force officers at Lake Elsinore Sheriff's Station and was booked on suspicion of murder, jail records show. On Wednesday, deputies from the Lake Elsinore station were called to the 500 block of Quail Drive to investigate the report of a shooting, and when they arrived, they found Gustavo Morales, 21, of Lake Elsinore, who appeared to have been shot to death, the Sheriff's Department said. It's unclear how investigators linked Buenrostro to Morales' killing, but the Sheriff's Department confirmed no other suspects were being sought in the case. Buenrostro was being held in lieu of $1 million bail at the Southwest Detention Center in Murrieta and is due in court Monday, jail records show. Okay? Now, this is a obituary for Gus, all right? I'm not particularly rocking with the guy, but as everybody said in there, it's only allegations at this stage. But this is a real guy that got killed, all right? And obviously we heard that the brother confirmed that Gus was the person who was involved with Celeste and got killed. So there he is, all right? Obituary for him. He was born July 15th, 1999 in West Covina, California, passed away October 14th in Paris, California, and would be under the care of the Oakdale Mortuary and Memorial Park. He had a visitation on November 16th at 2020 at 9 a.m. at Oakdale Memorial Park. Funeral service same day at 11 a.m. Survived by Gustavo and Alicia Morales, the parents. Okay? Interesting. You ready for something crazy? So, I'm going to show you this, right? I'm going to show you this. So this is a Facebook post, all right, related to the, at the time, as described as homicide or murder, okay? This is Buenrostro, all right, Noah, the person who allegedly did it, okay? This is an October 16th, 2020 post, 2 days after the alleged killing, and it basically explains they were notified, and the gang task force were contacted, and he was taken into custody in connection with Morales' death. Okay? This is a post with 200 likes on Facebook. Okay? Look who liked it. Celeste Hernandez. That's her. That's her account. That is the picture of her in the Jordans that, you know what I'm saying, we saw David cleaning. Jordan 4s. I used to have the same pair. That's really her. That's her. Okay? Celeste liked that this guy killed Gus. Okay, and that's not been seen before. Nobody's pointed that out. Nobody's brought that up at all up until this moment in time. Okay, shout out to my team. We've been digging into this. We've been trying to find more information about this Gus situation since people said that, you know, I hadn't spoke on it when I had, but we hadn't gotten to the bottom of it until this video. Okay, so People in the comments talking about no way he did it. I grew up from these blocks. These men, I knew both men from both sides when they were youngsters running the streets. Sad to see the streets win. People saying, do you guys have evidence or do you just like arresting people? If it wasn't justified self-defense, I hope he gets locked up for a long time. This says Gus was murdered. So a lot of people were commenting, giving their opinion. They're saying nice work to the deputies, all right? They're saying, was this the same guy arrested for kidnapping? It was. So Celeste is in the comments liking that this guy killed Gus, which makes me believe that it is very likely that, you know, he had done wrong by her. Because why would you like a post about the guy getting killed? Unless it's, you know, she's liking the fact that the guy got arrested, but it seems to me that she's liking the news of the murder. Now, something I'm going to show you that is rather interesting is that Noah, okay, the same person who was accused of shooting and killing Gus, was friends with Joshua Carrion, the same person who Gus had been basically arrested with earlier that year for the carjacking. So these guys all kind of knew each other. Something was going on between them. They were aware of each other. They were in the same community. Now, I'd said in a previous video I hadn't been able to get to the bottom of actually what had happened with this case. And basically, I've got an update now, and I finally got to the bottom of it with the help of my my researchers, okay? So this was on October the 27th, 2020. Noah pleaded not guilty to the murder charge, okay? Leg Elsinore teen denies murder following the shooting. In addition to the murder charge, he was also facing a sentence-enhancing gun and great bodily injury allegations. So he was accused of gunning down the 21-year-old man in the attack near the lake, pled not guilty. Noah's facing the gun charges that are going to enhance his sentence. He was arraigned before Riverside County Superior Court Judge Stephen Gallon, who scheduled a felony settlement conference December the 2nd at the Southwest Justice Center. $1 million bail was on him. Obviously, he wasn't able to raise that, and they kind of gave more details about the incident. Deputies were called to the location investigating reports of a man down, discovering Gus dead at the scene. Sheriff Sergeant Steve Broche basically was on the scene. Gang Task Force Central Homicide identified Buenrostro as the alleged assailant, but no other details were disclosed, including a motive. The defendant was summoned to Sheriff Lake Elsinore Station, and following an interview, he was taken into custody without incident the very next day. So after pleading not guilty to murder, all right, the case kind of got kicked back and forth for quite a period of time, but I got all the information on it here of how everything kind of ended up going back and forth. And basically over the course of the next year, the case was basically delayed or continued several times. It got moved around different dates. There were hearings that were moved. They got continued, vacated, moved around. It was kind of going back and forth from 2020 to 2021 all the way into 2022, basically over a whole year. Okay, we kind of see all of this going back and forth. Now, in November 2021, that's when the case moved towards this preliminary hearing. But again, that was delayed or continued, basically, all right? So again, it's sort of like just going back and forth, not really kind of getting to the bottom of this situation, not really getting to this preliminary hearing. Like we just had the preliminary hearing for David. And then finally on March the 4th, 2022, that's when Noah was like formally, officially charged with the murder. I guess that kind of all went forward in the end. It says here, information filed on that date, all right? So after that, he was officially arraigned for the murder on March the 14th. So it says legacy minute order, information arraignment. And then there was a request for a continuance. Now, it would take more than a year, and we'd wait until May the 31st, 2023, when Noah took a plea deal. But he didn't plea out to murder. He pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter and admitted several firearm enhancements. So them sentence enhancements related to the use of the firearm obviously didn't help him, but they basically clearly didn't feel confident into the ability of the prosecution to actually prove straight up murder with intent and all of that stuff. So like, let me give you a little bit of backstory on the difference between murder and voluntary manslaughter from this website here. So this is the Wegman and Levin Law Company website, and it's got some information about how murder charges can be reduced to voluntary manslaughter in LA County. It says any situation where loss of life occurs because of someone else's action is taken seriously by California law enforcement and the criminal justice system. Investigators will assess the details of the event to determine whether to bring charges against the party whose intentional or reckless actions led to another person's death. It's important to recognize that not all killings meet the legal definition of murder. In fact, there are some circumstances that may even justify taking someone else's life. For instance, someone fearing for their life may be able to use lethal force force to defend themselves against an imminent danger. If you're facing murder charges in the greater LA County, it's natural to feel overwhelmed and frightened about how these upcoming legal proceedings will affect your future. Like other states, California imposes some of the harshest and most lasting penalties for murder crimes, so a murder conviction can put you behind bars for the rest of your life. Enlisting the guidance of quality criminal defense lawyers can maximize your chances of a fair and favorable outcome, and in some cases, your criminal defense attorney may be able to have the charges against you reduced from murder to voluntary manslaughter, which carries far less harsh penalties. So, the difference between a voluntary manslaughter and murder is as follows. Okay, what is a voluntary manslaughter in California? Under Cali law, homicide is the general term for crimes involving the taking of a life. Under this larger umbrella term, a defendant may be charged with murder, i.e. killing of someone with what's known as malice aforethought, or manslaughter where the defendant did not have a malicious intent. Below is a brief overview of how these two criminal defense offenses differ, as well as their potential penalties if the defendant is convicted of the underlying offense. Homicide cases often involve complex legal distinctions that hinge on the intent and circumstances surrounding the unlawful killing committed. For example, murder charges typically require proof of intent to kill or cause severe bodily harm, which is often referred to as malice aforethought. This intent to kill separates murder from manslaughter, where the killing may be unintentional or occurred due to criminal negligence or reckless disregard for human life. Felony murder is another important concept in California law, where somebody kills somebody during the commission of a felony, such as a robbery or burglary, even if the killing was unintentional. In these cases, an alleged perpetrator can be charged with first-degree murder, reflecting the severe consequences of causing death during a criminal act. Manslaughter charges, on the other hand, cover situations where the defendant didn't have the intent to kill but still caused a death through reckless or negligent actions. Voluntary manslaughter occurs when an intentional killing happens in the heat of passion under circumstances that would cause a reasonable person to lose self-control. This differs from involuntary manslaughter, which involves unintentional killing resulting from criminal negligence or reckless driving, such as drunk driving leading to a fatal accident. Understanding the distinctions between murder and manslaughter charges is critical for developing an effective legal strategy. A skilled defense attorney can evaluate the facts of the case, including getting comfortable in this chair, including the degree of intent, any provocation, and the circumstances of the unlawful killing committed to determine the best defense approach. This may include arguing for a reduction of charges from murder to voluntary manslaughter, or even seeking to have the case dismissed altogether. The penalties for murder and manslaughter differ significantly under California law. First-degree murder can result in life in prison, or even the death penalty in cases with special circumstances, while voluntary manslaughter typically carries a prison sentence ranging from 3 to 11 years. The involvement of a criminal defense lawyer experienced in homicide cases is essential, okay? So we kind of get the gist, all right, of the difference between these, okay? You get the gist, all right? The intent to actually murder somebody, manslaughter, is that you did something with, like, reckless regard for whether or not their life was gone, all right? So it was voluntary manslaughter that Gus went down for, right? And it's cases where the defendant didn't plan ahead intentionally to take the life of another person, but it is still the unlawful killing of a human being without malice, okay? 3 types of manslaughter: voluntary, involuntary, and vehicular. Voluntary occurs when the defendant takes the life of another upon a sudden quarrel or heat of passion. In other words, the defendant was provoked somehow and in the heat of the moment acted in a way that proved fatal to the other person, okay? This is different from involuntary. Right, so voluntary manslaughter versus murder charges, basically it's all about the intent and the circumstances surrounding the killing. Murder requires the prosecution to prove that the defendant acted with malice aforethought, meaning that there was an intent to kill from the very start. And basically this could be express, where they said that they planned out the killing, or implied, where they acted with a complete disregard for life, knowing that it could result in that. But voluntary manslaughter is the killing that involves the heat of the passion, a sudden quarrel. Basically, this is repeating itself. This is Loki repeating itself, right? So that's what ended up happening. He took that plea, all right? And then what he ended up getting, which was very interesting, he was finally sentenced on June the 23rd, 2023. So, like, you know, we're getting to, like, around 3 years after the incident. That he'd been sat down waiting for this. He was sentenced to 6 years in state prison for voluntary manslaughter. He got a 10-year firearm enhancement, but the original murder charge was fully dismissed, okay? So it was voluntary manslaughter, was sentenced for that, basically 72 months in state prison, 120 months in state prison for the enhancement. And so according to court records, he got credit for 982 days of time served, 147 days of additional credit, And it says, basically, even after Noah got sentenced, the case was open for issues like restitution. And in February 2024, you know, that still was open at that point. But it basically ended in a voluntary manslaughter conviction rather than a murder conviction. And that is official. And as it says here, 187, PC murder, first degree, dismissed. All right. And there were other kind of felonies that were stricken, various enhancements that were kind of put on him. But basically the voluntary manslaughter was conviction, or he took a plea for that. And then that was the end of it. So I haven't seen anybody kind of get to the bottom of this case. Like, I haven't seen anybody actually find out what happened with this until this video. I think the fact that Celeste actually personally liked the post on Facebook about him, you know, the person who killed Gus getting caught. Now, again, I don't know for sure if that's her being happy that he got killed or happy that the person that killed Gus got caught. We don't know if she kind of still had some sympathy for her. She was probably, I mean, she didn't even make it to an age where she was really old enough to even process what had happened to her. And I do wonder if there's ever going to be any other proof that comes out as far as conversations or, you know, leaked discussions with other people about how she felt about this situation. But it really just is a sad situation all in all. You know, there's this whole thing where people are talking about, and I think it's disgraceful, where people are trying to say, oh, well, the parents let her get by this guy Gus that was a family friend. I would like to see some proof of that. I've seen zero proof of that. And if you notice that the guy, well, basically, right, Gus got killed in 2020, okay? It's now 6 years later. I've yet to see any kind of charges brought against the parent for allowing Gus to abuse her. It just sounds like nonsense. I don't think it's true, and I just think that it's part of a much wider campaign to smear the parents and try and give David an out. And I think once we actually get to trial, I think we're going to see a whole bunch of really disgusting attempts to try and make out like it's the family's fault that Celeste died, and that, as Blair Burke herself said, that their client David Burke was not responsible for the death, did not cause the death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. And I think it's nonsense. And it's not going to work. David's going to get cooked. He's probably going to get life in jail without the possibility of parole, maybe the death penalty if we're lucky. And he's going to lose all of his money. His family and his parents are going to lose all of their money. Celeste's family are going to be very wealthy as a result of this horrific crime that David is solely responsible for, if the allegations are true. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope you found that an interesting and useful breakdown. I would love to know more about the circumstances of this killing, but this is literally all of the information that we could find about it at this time. So let me know what you thought of that. I will see you guys in the next video. And for now, guys, I'm out. Peace.